But look, at the end of the day, there's only one thing we're talking about, and it's not even that loss. Okay, we did lose to Philly 38-31, another game that we had a lead. We were up early, kind of fell off towards late, but we're not even going to dive into that, ladies and gentlemen. We kind of expected that to happen and played a little bit better than I guess we could say we expected. But as a fallout of that, and probably a precursor, because we heard prior to that game that there's two guys that were potentially on the trading block. Both of those guys were traded, and it kind of surprised me that it was both. And we're going to give out our initial trade deadline reaction. Montez Sweat and Chase Young both land elsewhere. Montez Sweat goes to Chicago Bears for a second, and Chase to San Francisco for a third
compensatory third.
Yeah. Now, I do want to switch to the other side with Montez. He got traded to Chicago for a second. This definitely surprised me, and it was the first trade. And this was the one, like, you messaged me, and on one message you were like, all right, here, this is the move. This is what Josh Harris, this is what they're doing. They're making moves. And then the next one, when we got both of them, you're like, what's going on here? Like, and I, too, was just looking like, what happened? But what do you say about this trade?
So it's been reported that they did not think they were going to get the compensation that they got.
Yeah.
And they also, if they could choose, they were going to trade Chase but keep Montez. Yeah. And then they got an offer they couldn't refuse.
Yep.
Leading up to this, it seemed like Atlanta was going to be the place he was going to go. He's from Atlanta. I would bet that's where he signs this offseason. And Atlanta was willing to give us a third-round pick with the condition if he signs a long-term extension, they can move to a second-rounder. And then I had also told you, I said, hey, man, you got to hold off. If now that this is public, let's let us see if another team's going to come in here and one-up that. And Chicago did.
Yeah.
And Chicago gave us their second-round pick, which as of right now is going to be in the top 10 of the second round. And I think the team was like, we can't say no to this.
Okay.
We have to say yes to this, and so they did. And, because they basically just said like, okay, well, this is good for business. And so they accepted it.
Yeah. Oh God. But what is this? This was, like we've said, this was the one that kind of hurt. This is the one where we were kind of like, because even though he had the issues that he had over those first couple years, this last couple years, especially going back to last year, that defense, I mean, really the three of them, Montez, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, they worked inside the scheme. They worked well. Montez Sweat and all of the twists and the stunts and all the things where he was working with these guys is one of the reasons why Deron Payne got paid, because they worked very well, playing off of each other and together. So this one from a production standpoint is kind of like, oh man, wow, we could have used him. But then at the same time, they made an offer you can't refuse. I think sometimes that trumps everything else. Like we need to build for the future, and this could be it.
Yeah, no, I think I actually probably was a little bit more emotionally disappointed with Chase leaving just because of that untapped potential. Mm-hmm. Whereas Montez, and maybe it was because there was enough rumors out there, you just kind of knew he was being traded.
Yeah.
But my concern about the Montez getting rid of him was he reminds me of Preston Smith. Preston Smith was a good player here. He wasn't a great player.
Yeah.
But he went to another team in his prime. He went to the Packers. And in year one, he had 12 sacks. And that same year, we drafted Montez Sweat, and he didn't have 12 sacks. He showed flashes, but he didn't. But then I also kind of sat there and said, all right, well, Montez is on pace to get more than 10 sacks this year. Mm-hmm. But it's the whole point of like, they're good, but they're not great. Neither one of them are these game-changing guys that are worth $25 million a year, which is what it's going to cost to bring him back. And it's like, now with that second-round pick, we can go get an edge rusher in the draft to directly replace him. And we're doing exactly what we did in 2019. We let Preston walk, and we drafted Montez in the first round. And we have that ability to do that again in this draft by getting a very high second-round pick from Chicago. Because between their second-round pick and our second-round pick, depending on how the rest of the season goes, we're probably going to have 2 picks in the second round in the top 20, maybe in the top 15, maybe in the top 10. Those are opportunities to get impactful players. And so to directly replace him, a good player, but not a great player, I was kind of like, in the long run, this is a great move for the team.
Right. And I think that's something that, especially us as fans, we have a habit of doing, where you're kind of like, I mean, he's playing really well, and I'm with him. I like this guy. I want him to be a part, and he's really helping our defense. But then we're putting that cap on, because it's like you're saying, 10 sacks might be it, and if that. And where he plays really well, he also sometimes it's so. You know what I mean? And it's like you're saying, he's not the impact guy. He's not the guy that we thought we were going to get. We thought we were getting a big-time impact defensive end, a game changer. He wasn't that. And the same with Chase Young. But I think what you've been saying and what we've been talking about over the last several years on what we knew was coming. We knew that there was that impending signing that you mentioned between the both of them these next couple of years. We were going to have to do something. So we knew somebody was going, but when you looked at this and it came down to Montez, and it was really like, do we want to pull the trigger on this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'll even go one step further with Daron Payne. He was very adamant, and he was very kind of disgruntled early in last season in training camp, because he wanted to get paid. And he shut up and played and balled out and got his money. This was that year for both of them. And while they have had the number of sacks, still you're not killing anybody. Nobody's fearing you. No, I never forget watching the Atlanta game. Chase Young went right up on the defender, tried to get around him. Defender held his ground, got both, countered both moves, and then you just saw Chase step back, and the play was still going on.
Yes,
and you're just like, wait a minute. And then, like I alluded to earlier, Casey Toohill running these guys down from all the way around the other side. And you're like, that's the guy we need to pay. Right. Not this one right here.
Dun, 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 dun.
Let's go. The Washington Commanders. There it is.